Once upon a time, there was a miller's son who was sad and said to himself, "I've had a pretty bad deal. My oldest brother has a mill, my second brother has a donkey, and all I have is a cat. What am I supposed to do with her?" "Listen," began the cat, who understood everything, "just make me a pair of boots so that I can go out and be seen among people, and soon you'll see your fortune change." The miller's son was surprised that the cat could talk like this, but just then, a shoemaker passed by. He called him in and had him measure the cat for a pair of boots. When they were ready, the cat put them on and walked out the door on 2 legs, just like a human. At that time, there was a king in the land who loved to eat partridges. But there was a problem: they were impossible to find. The whole forest was full of them, but they were so shy that no hunter could catch them. The cat knew this and decided to do better. He caught many partridges and headed straight to the king's castle. The guards shouted, "Stop! Where are you going?" "To the king," answered the cat. "What, a cat going to the king?" "Let him pass," said another guard, "the king is often bored, maybe the cat will amuse him." When the cat reached the king, he bowed deeply and said, "My lord, the count, sends his regards to king and presents him with these partridges." The king was overjoyed and ordered the cat to be rewarded with as much gold as he could carry. "Take this to your master, and thank him very much for his gift." The poor miller's son sat at home by the window, thinking that he had spent his last money on the cat's boots and that the cat probably wouldn't bring him anything better in return. Just then, the cat walked in and poured the gold in front of the miller, saying, "Here is some gold from the king who greets you and thanks you for the partridges." The miller was overjoyed at the sudden wealth, even though he couldn't quite grasp how it had happened. The cat, while taking off his boots, explained everything to him. Then he said, "You have enough money now, but that's not the end of it. Tomorrow, I will put on my boots again, and you will become even richer. I told the king that you are a count." The next day, the cat heard from a coachman that the king and the princess were at the lake for a walk. When the cat heard this, he sneaked back home and said to his master, "If you want to become a count and be rich, come with me to the lake and bathe in it." The miller didn't know what to say but followed the cat, undressed, and jumped into the water. The cat took his clothes, carried them away, and hid them. Just as he finished, the king arrived. The cat immediately started to complain, "Oh, king! My master has come here to bathe in the lake, but a thief has come and stolen his clothes that were lying on the shore. Now the count is in the water and can't get out, and if he stays in there any longer, he will catch a cold." When the king heard this, he gave the count clothes from his own wardrobe. The count put on the magnificent clothes, and since the king already liked him for the partridges he thought he had received, he had to sit with him in the carriage. The princess was not upset either because the count was young and handsome, and she quite liked him. The cat had gone ahead and reached a large meadow where many people were making hay. "Whose meadow is this?" asked the cat. "The wizard's," they replied. "Listen, the king will pass by shortly. If he inquires about the owner of the meadow, answer, the count." The cat continued and came to a field of wheat where many people were harvesting. "Whose wheat is this?" "The wizard's." "Listen, the king will pass by shortly. If he asks about the owner of the wheat, answer, the count." Finally, the cat arrived at a magnificent forest where many people were cutting down large oaks and gathering wood. "Whose forest is this?" "The wizard's." "Listen, the king will pass by shortly. If he wants to know the owner of the forest, answer, the count." The cat continued on his way. He soon arrived at the wizard's castle and entered. The wizard looked at him disdainfully and asked him what he wanted. The cat bowed deeply and said, "I have heard that you can transform into any animal at your will. When it comes to dogs, foxes, or even wolves, I can believe it, but transforming into an elephant seems utterly impossible to me. That's why I've come to see for myself." The wizard proudly replied, that's child's play for me," and instantly transformed into an elephant. "That's impressive," said the cat, "but can you also transform into a lion?" "That's nothing," said the wizard, and he appeared as a lion before the cat. The cat pretended to be frightened and exclaimed, "This is unbelievable. But even more incredible than anything else would be if you could transform into such a small creature as a mouse." The wizard smiled and said, "Oh yes, dear kitty, I can do that too," and he leaped around the room as a mouse. At that moment, the cat chased the mouse out of the castle. But the king continued his journey with the count and the princess, arriving at the large meadow. "To whom does this hay belong?" asked the king. "It belongs to the count," everyone shouted, just as the cat had instructed them. "You have a beautiful piece of land here," said the king. Then they reached the vast wheat field. "Whose wheat is this?" "It belongs to the count." "Count? Magnificent, vast estates." Then, they came to the forest. "To whom does this wood belong?" "It belongs to the count." The king became even more astonished and said, "You must be a wealthy man, Count. I don't believe I have a forest as splendid as this." Finally, they reached the castle. The cat stood at the top of the stairs, and when the carriage stopped below, he jumped down, opened the door, and said, "King, you are entering the castle of my master, the count." The king stepped out and marveled at the magnificent building, which was almost larger and more beautiful than his own castle. The count led the princess up the stairs to the hall, which shimmered entirely with gold and precious stones. Afterward, the princess and the count fell in love and lived happily and contentedly until the end of their days.